Yes!
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another brand new episode of The Completionist. This year, we're celebrating 30 years of Metroid. We've had a lot of ups, we've had a lot of downs, but this year, we've got some good games coming out for Metroid. If you are part of the fan community, another Metroid 2 remake just came out recently, and I cannot stress enough that you guys have to get your hands on it. It pays a great tribute to Metroid 2 on the Game Boy, and it is incredible. And if you're getting ready to use your 3DS for a brand new Metroid game, you'd be surprised how fun Metroid Prime Federation Force is. I've been playing it a lot recently because I got a release copy of it, and I'm really enjoying it. So, you know what? Instead of playing Metroid Prime Force, I wanted to kind of focus on the next entry right here on the show for Metroid Prime, and that's going to be Metroid Prime 2 Echoes for the Nintendo GameCube. Pretend for just a moment that you're Samus Aran. Go ahead, put on a helmet and shove your fist into a Pringles can if you have to. Okay, now imagine that you're the star of a successful, genre-defining sci-fi adventure video game series, but you haven't had a new game in 8 years. Then, out of nowhere, boom, Metroid Prime all up in everyone's face. First-person perspective, kick-ass visuals and soundtrack, gameplay that's immersive and refined as all hell. You're the popular girl in the video game high school. Everyone loves you, and everyone wants to take you to prom, except you say no to Steve because Steve asks very rudely. Okay, now pretend that it's 2 years later. Don't you feel like you have a responsibility to star in a sequel? You can't just deliver a product like the original Metroid Prime and then leave it at that. You're not Dr. Dre. You can't just drop something like the Chrono 2001 and then just chill for the rest of your life. No one forgot about you. Thankfully, Nintendo manages to put out more games than the good doctor puts out albums. All respect, Dre. This is the millennium of Aftermath. For the second time around, they wanted to focus more on a narrative, incorporating fresh new art designs, adding new gameplay elements, and even including some of the features they always wanted to be in the original game, but never had a chance to implement them. They felt that the players had more than enough time to get used to the new mechanics of Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime 2 was going to be perfect, and it was going to save humanity. Well, maybe not that, but it was going to be bloody spectacular. And when it released in 2004, everyone knew their role and recognized how perfect it was. Okay, in all honesty, almost everyone loved it. A few had some concerns with its increased difficulty, but they're not badass space bounty hunters, are they? And some criticized the game's multiplayer, but they're not the chosen warrior of the Chozo, so what do they know? The game won a basket full of awards, and it may be the strongest entry in one of the greatest gaming trilogies of all time. And it's goddamn perfect! Oh, look who's popular! Samus is getting text messages from across the galaxy concerning a squadron of Galactic Federation troopers who've been completely out of contact for 8 days. This does not bode well. Samus has gotta eat, so she takes the job to track them down, starting with their last known location, the planet Aether, a shimmering purple ball that totally doesn't look dangerous or unstable at all. Nope, looks safe enough to just fly right into it. Yo, what? You've got to be kidding me. Samus' ship takes a direct hit from a bolt of lightning, sending her crashing through the surface into some kind of cavern? Yeah, but she's a tough chick, and it's gonna take more than that just to stop her. Plus, she's got all sorts of dope upgrades and weapons to keep her safe. They're always by her side and never disappear, right? As she moves through the facility, Samus discovers the corpses of the missing troopers all over the place. But things get really freaky when some weird purple energy starts encircling those corpses. This does not bode well. The bodies spring to life and start shooting at her, but even though they might seem alive, they're not. They're space zombies. Samus sends the troopers back to the grave and soon comes across a freaking dimensional portal. And on the other side is a dark mirrored version of the planet Aether. Samus encounters a strange dark doppelganger of herself that appears to be made of Phazon, the volatile material that was central to the plot of the first Metroid Prime. In addition to totally ripping off someone's look, this dark Samus also appears to have control over the snarling beasts who live in this dark realm. Before Samus knows what's up, the beasts treat her like she got lost in 1980s South Central LA and jack all of her upgrades. Then they kick her sorry ass back through the portal into the light world. Eventually, Samus comes across a freaky alien bug called Umos. He tells the story of how long ago his people, the Luminoth, witnessed something fall to their planet and explode, creating a tear in time and space. The explosion actually created two different planet Aethers, one of the light and one of the dark. For clarity's sake, we'll call the original Aether Aether and the dark Aether Daether. The Dark World also birthed dark beings known as the Ing, and unfortunately, they were born with nothing but hatred in their hearts. It's been a literal power struggle between the two worlds. And because we're Samus and we're awesome, we're on Team Aether. And yeah, we're probably not getting paid, so, you know. Regardless, Samus has her mission, save Aether, and more importantly, find a way to deal with the imposter who's been flying around calling herself Samus. You can't just have a pretender to the throne out there potentially ruining your name. What if Samus wants to rent a car one day or buy a condo? Dark Samus ruining my credit. Metroid Prime 2 delivers just as much sleek and sexy sci-fi flavor as its predecessor. Nothing looks, sounds, or feels quite like a Metroid Prime game, and this game turns that uniqueness way the hell up with its even greater focus on its art direction and themes of light versus dark. Let's just get this out of the way. The music in this game, in this entire series, is some of the very best ever made. I have half a mind just to play some of it right now and let it speak for itself. You know what? Patrick, go for it. Play the main theme right now. Hot damn, that's some good stuff. It perfectly captures the creepy, isolated alien atmosphere that's prevalent in these games. Throughout the rest of the soundtrack, you also get to hear dark, minimalistic versions of certain overworld tracks from when you travel to their corresponding Daether locations. Duality is a clear, strong theme here, and it's cool to see the music reflect that too. You can always count on Metroid locations to be varied and interesting, and this game delivers. You've got a wasteland, a swamp, and a technological fortress that looks like something out of Tron. But things get really interesting when you compare these locations to their Daether counterparts. Each locale becomes corrupted in its own special way, providing even more visual variety. The scanning interface has been improved greatly from the last game, allowing you to easily identify what's scannable and if you've already scanned it already. In the first Metroid Prime, if you wanted that 100% scan rating, you kind of had to walk around with your scan visor almost all the time, but thankfully, everything here is bright and color-coded for easy cataloging. You can now finally put that scan visor away, Samus. Things are different now. Speaking of Samus's visor, it's still one of the most effective tools for keeping the player immersed in the experience. There are a few cutscenes here and there, but they're usually pretty quick. Most of the time, it's just you looking through Samus's eyes. And who wouldn't want to look through those beautiful eyes? If I could crawl inside that head, John Malkovich style, I would. Metroid Prime 2 is one of those games in which you could accidentally lose yourself for hours if you're not careful, keeping the player locked into that first-person perspective and allowing them to experience the history of the world through subtle clues is a great way to make them forget that they're playing a game altogether. Sometimes you just gotta stop and smell the alien flowers, just like sometimes you've gotta stop and bump that soundtrack. Can someone please make a beat out of this already? Listen to how awesome that is. It's clear that the thinking behind Metroid Prime 2 was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. With its outstanding and surprisingly traditional gameplay, the first game redefined what a Metroid game could be. All the great stuff you'd expect from a Metroid is still here in the sequel, just with some cool new stuff thrown in. You've still got to shoot, explore, and puzzle solve your way to victory, but Samus wouldn't be caught dead using the same tech that she did in her last adventure. On top of her trusty beam cannon, she's also got a dark beam which literally throws shade at people. You eventually get your hands on the light beam, which basically fires rainbows and deals super effective damage to those dirty old Ing. Interestingly, these weapons don't have unlimited ammo like traditional Metroid firearms. You have to find ammo for each of them or generate them by killing enemies, just like you would missiles or health drops. But you can only generate ammo for one weapon by taking enemies out with the opposite weapon. Pretty clever, devs, making sure that people use both weapons instead of relying focusing on just one. And then there's the Annihilator Beam, which fuses light and dark energy together like the middle nozzle of a soft-serve machine. Sorry folks, we're all out of Captain Crunch flavor. The only flavor we've got left in stock, though, is White Hot Death, and the only toppings available are a fatal blend of matter and antimatter. The Annihilator Beam uses up twice as much ammo as the others, but it's so worth it. If Samus wouldn't use the same tech as last time, then there's no way she'd wear the same outfits either. In addition to her classic Varia suit, she also dons the Dark suit, which minimizes how much damage the caustic atmosphere of Dather does to you. But eventually, she finds the light suit, which shields her completely from Dather's air and allows her to teleport like a Power Ranger along beams of light. And check out Samus's new shades. The dark theme continues with the dark visor. And no, it doesn't just make everything darker like sunglasses, Scott Baio. It lets Samus see invisible items and enemies. And then there's the Echo Visor, which lets you see sound waves as they bounce off of surfaces. Metroid Prime 2 handles its backtracking in a somewhat clever way thanks to the conceit of alternate dimensions. Many times during your backtracking, you'll be doing so through the Dather version of that location, meaning that it's not too similar to your first time through. Speaking of Dather, it sucks. It's the worst. The very atmosphere hurts you, and the only way to stay safe is to take temporary refuge in the little bubbles of light that are placed sporadically throughout the landscape. But difficulty aside, we're dealing with jumping between parallel worlds, which means we've got some cool 4th dimension mechanics to play with. The game's bosses are just as challenging and well thought out as they've always been in the Metroid series. But there's a really cool new mechanic here that makes the bosses in Metroid Prime 2 extra special. See, when the Ing jacked all of Samus's gear, they split it amongst themselves. And as a result, many of the game's bosses actually use Samus's own tech against her. Like the Bomb Guardian, who's got Samus's Morph Ball bomb, or the Jump Guardian, who stole Samus's goddamn shoes! Your own personal nemesis throughout the game is Dark Samus, and she is one tough lady. She's powered by Phazon, making her incredibly fast and capable of long sets of invulnerability. But what's worse is that she adapts over time, just like you. Every time you meet up with her, she's improved her arsenal, proving to be an adversary worthy of your skills. Metroid Prime 2 does include a multiplayer mode. The controls are pretty close to that of the main campaign, and you have access to almost all of Samus's abilities while you play. Some abilities, however, must be collected while in the arena. The first mode is a simple deathmatch, and the second one is bounty mode, in which the victor is the player who collects the most coins. These coins can be found in chests or knocked out of your opponents. Finally, a gimme my money mode. Let's face it, it's not the most refined multiplayer experience, but it doesn't diminish the perfect campaign at all, so no harm, no foul. Metroid Prime 2 took everything the previous one did right and refined it into an experience that plays off its own themes of light and dark really well. Things are definitely tougher this time around, but that's just so we can impress the Ing. They're not gonna let us in their gang unless we can take the hazing. Psh. Nah, man, it's cool. You can just take my grapple beam and try to eat me with it. It's all good, Dather. It's all good on Dather, fam. I got this. Don't even trip. Don't even trip. Take my shit. I got this. Samus has been kicking ass and taking names all over both versions of Aether, and she's restored almost all of the energy that the Ing have stolen from the Light World. Having hunted down all 9 keys to the Sky Temple, she's finally ready to enter the last stronghold of the darkness. I guess I should have brought up the whole Sky Temple and 9 keys thing earlier, but surprise! Here we are. Once inside, Samus spots the last of the light, but just as she's about to grab it, it's swallowed up by the biggest baddie the Dark World has to offer, the Emperor Ing. This series of boss fights comes in 3 phases, each of which will challenge you to your core. Just breathe, relax, and take your time. Even if you die, you just live and learn. It's pretty straightforward and obvious. After Samus collects the last of the light, Dather begins to destabilize itself. She only has 8 minutes to get back to her dimension, but standing in her way is the true final boss of the game, that poser, that wannabe bitch, Dark Samus. She's absorbed so much Phazon energy that she looks like a damn spooky, scary skeleton. You have a problem, Dark Samus. You don't know when to stop. Now, I'm sure you're like me and you thought to yourself, Jesus Christ, another boss fight with several phases to it? Well, you're almost there. Just give it your best shot. And once you take him down, it's time to get the hell out of Dodge. Dather's exploding, enemies are exploding, we gotta get to the other side of the portal and get out! Some of the Ing try to weasel their way into the light world, but it's too late. Dather is destroyed, and the portal is closed for forever. With the light returned to its rightful place, the remaining Luminoth salute Samus, signaling that they're probably not going to be paying her. So, Samus pieces out of there like Bender at the end of The Breakfast Club. With absolutely no pay and barely a thank you, Samus returns to her ship and calls it a day. But now she's got to end up having to use a flat rate when she takes jobs from now on. Guys, if the Luminoth had at least tipped her, it would have been fine. Would have been just fine. But you just know she's got to overcharge for the rest of us who need some bounties hunted. The Luminoth are totally those guys who take pennies from the tray, but never ever leave a penny. Don't be that guy, you f***ing aliens. Metroid Prime 2 has a few unlockables, but none of them are hidden behind collectible fluff. Between actual power-ups and the information you collect from scanning, every secret that the game has to offer is tied to things that you'll actually want to get. Firstly, there's your trusty logbook, where Samus meticulously records her research on creatures, technology, and lore. You'll find this kind of stuff all over the game, and even though the scannable items are easier to identify this time around, you'd still better be vigilant if you're trying to fill your logbook completely. Filling out that logbook will periodically unlock sections of the game's art gallery. The character gallery opens up when you've completed 60% of the game's scans. The creature gallery is accessed with 80%, and the boss gallery is yours once your logbook is completely filled up. There are even 2 extra galleries that you can unlock by beating the game. Doing so on normal difficulty unlocks the rough sketch gallery, and beating it on hard mode gets you the storyboard gallery. Enjoy your pretty pictures, folks. You've earned them. Speaking of beating the game, there are a couple of extended endings that you can unlock based on how many items and upgrades you collected during the campaign. You'll get the first ending with Samus unceremoniously blasting off into space if you finish the game with less than 75% of all the items collected. But if you locate between 75% and 99% of those power-ups, then you'll get the same ending, except this time Samus removes her Varia suit before she boards her ship, revealing the famous Zero suit. I guess hunting down all those items in that heavy-ass suit can make you tired. I know the feeling. The first thing I do after getting home from a long day at work is take off my pants too.
Yeah, baby!
And lastly, collecting every single item in the game will unlock a secret post-credits scene. In the void that once was Dather, there is a faint blue light. That light coalesces into a familiar form of punk-ass Dark Samus. She just won't stay down. Samus has way more followers on Instagram than you do. Just stay dead or delete all of your social accounts. The enemies are tougher, the gameplay is harsher, and the puzzles are trickier than ever before in Metroid Prime 2. But the game never stops feeling incredibly fun and rewarding no matter how you play it, except for the multiplayer. You'll probably get tired of that pretty quickly. In the campaign, there are certain sections that are pretty unforgiving. Sometimes you'll have to fight a boss within the Dark World, but in order to get to them, you'll have to drag your ass a long way from the nearest save room, which means that if that boss kills you, you'll have to trek all the way back again, probably while taking damage the whole time, making that rematch much harder. It's not like it's unfair or anything like that, but it is one of the many ways in which Metroid Prime 2 offers more challenge to its players, which may be a bit too much for some of you out there. So with that said, in my playthrough of Metroid Prime 2, there were 11 game over screens, 3 campaign runs completed on the hardest difficulty, 15 energy tanks taken, 50 missile expansions upgraded, hundreds and hundreds of items scanned, 28 hours of total playtime, and 30 cents made by Samus during her mission to Aether. She had a quarter in her pocket, and then one of the Grenchlers swallowed a nickel, so there you go. Using your wits and Samus's ever-growing list of abilities to track down power-ups and collect lore are some of the best moments of this game, which makes the road to 100% completion rarely feel like a chore. You may not get much for your efforts as far as bonuses go, but playing through Metroid Prime 2 is enough of a reward into itself. I'm a big fan of Metroid Prime 1. It had a lot of great things that kind of brought me back into the series. With Metroid Prime 2, I was skeptical at first, but I walked away loving this game way more than I thought. In fact, I think this one's better than Metroid Prime 1. All the issues I have with Metroid Prime are kind of forgotten about because they're addressed. I will say as a completionist though, you might not enjoy what you see at the end of it, because sometimes the journey's the reward. The reward is not as fruitful as you want it to be. I guess that's kind of the theme of the show here, isn't it? So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of finish it.
Finish it!
That's all the time we have for today, guys, so please, as always, let me know what you thought about today's episode somewhere on the internet. Question of the day: if you could take the Metroid franchise and combine a genre of game, where would you go with it and why? Personally, I would love to see a Final Fantasy Tactics version of the Metroid franchise. It'd be kind of cool. You have Samus on the playing field and like other Federation Force people, maybe some Metroids to battle Metroids on your side. I don't know. I think it'd be really cool to have like this space tactical kind of, 3D battlefield. That's just me. Now, if you excuse me, here's some footage of me rolling around at the speed of sound, listening to City Escape. Or Escape the City, whichever one you prefer.
Rolling around at the speed of sound.